So many times when we hear about human trafficking, we have a certain idea about what it is and what it's not. And most often we think human trafficking equals sex trafficking or prostitution, but that is not the truth. So human trafficking is not only sex trafficking, it's not only prostitution, and it is not human smuggling. Okay. So I think now the next one is global. Okay. So you will see there's the world, quite grey. And as we move on, I will show you the trends of trafficking. So the first one we will be looking at is child soldiers. So I'm just going to read you the description as the Paris Principles and Guidelines on Children associated with armed forces or armed groups explained it. Okay, so child soldier
is a shorthand term for any girl or boy below the age of 18 who is recruited or used by an armed force or armed group in any capacity. So that means porters, cooks, messengers, spies, suicide bombers, or for sexual exploitation. So as you can see, the red parts, that is in my Nachforschung research. That's what I found. So the red part is where you will find the trend of child soldiers in human trafficking. The next one we look at is descent-based slavery. So descent-based slavery describes a situation where people are born into slavery because their ancestors were captured into slavery and the families have belonged to the slave-owning families ever since. So it's not that many countries. If we look at the map, you will see it's mostly just Africa. Okay. The next one we look at is debt bondage, also known as bonded labor. So debt bondage occurs when a person is forced to work to pay off a debt, but they never pay it off. So they eventually come into a country and they say, okay, so we organize transport for you, you now owe us money for the transport, but it never ends. So they never know what they owe, they have no control over paying it back. And that is not the extent of it, that's just what I found, and I did not do a super duper duper thorough research, but just to give you an overview. So the red parts again is where you'll find it. The next one we look at is forced labor. So forced labor is compulsory labor. It's all work or service which is exacted from any person under the threat of a penalty and for which the person has not offered himself or herself voluntarily. So you can see all the countries there. And I went through the trafficking in persons report. I only got to the M's. So I didn't do the whole report. And that is just only getting to the M's, okay. So the next one we look at is forced begging. So some beggars are being forced to do so by others. And they have to hand over all of their earnings. And sometimes they even rent children from families to do the begging. Once again, not thorough, but just to give you a general idea. Then we look at forced marriage. You can't see it now, but that little horsey has a nice bouquet of flowers on his head. So that's why I chose him. So people can be forced, coerced, threatened, or tricked into marrying someone without their informed consent. And many times that includes child marriages. And if someone is forced or tricked into marriage, it many times turns into domestic servitude and sexual slavery afterwards. So I also did not get very far, but just a general idea of the places that you will find this. Then the next one is organ trafficking. And we all know what that is. So they just take stuff from you. Once again, red parts. Then we look at sex trafficking and the countries where I really just got to the M's, so that's not even the whole picture. And trafficking in domestic work. So many times this goes hand in hand with sex trafficking or sexual exploitation as well. Wow, there's supposed to be a picture, but anyway. Okay, child labor. So child labor is often tied in with forced labor and tied in with domestic servitude, tied in with sexual exploitation as well. And also, not all of the countries, but just to give you a general idea. There's also supposed to be a picture there, so yeah. And trafficking in fishing. It is many times in countries like Ghana, it happens inside the country, but otherwise people are trafficked outside of the country. They work on vessels in the ocean. And also just a general idea of that. And then baby factories. I wanted to read you what Wikipedia describes this as. It's quite chilling. So it says, child harvesting refers to the systematic sale of human children, typically for adoption by families in the developed world, but sometimes for other purposes, including trafficking. Child harvesting programs, or the locations at which this takes place, is referred to as baby factories. So it's also a big part of the global world where this happens. Okay, then we are going to look at trafficking in persons in South Africa. Nicole, am I talking too fast? Sorry guys, that's nerves, I'm so sorry. Okay, so trafficking in persons in South Africa. South Africa's legislation refers to human trafficking as trafficking in persons. So South Africa is a source, transit, and destination country. So what this means is that when you think about a field of flowers, and you go to the field of flowers and you decide what you pick and you take it home. So South Africa is like that. They come here, they pick, they decide who they want, and they take them out of the country. But also it's a transit country, so many times they will pick whoever they want in another country, take them through South Africa to the eventual country they want to use them in. And a destination country is where they would have picked them, let's say, in Russia, they've taken them through, let's say, Australia, and now they arrive in South Africa. But it also happens in South Africa, so it does not mean you have to be moved across a border. You don't even have to move outside of a house or from town to town. It can happen in one house. Trafficking can happen in a house. Okay, so we in South Africa have cultural practices that also play into human trafficking. So we've all heard about muti, and have you all heard about ukutwala? Okay, so let's then start with the muti. Many people are trafficked for muti, and before being butchered and used, they are sexually exploited as well, just for this cultural practice that does not seem to want to die out. And ukutwala is in the Eastern Cape, if I'm correct, a practice where young girls, some as young as 12, are sold to older men, and they have no say in this, so they force it into the marriage. And it used to be a cultural practice way back, but now girls as young as 12, they're not allowed to marry. So there are legislation against that. But still they do that, and they practice this under the guise of tradition. But it's not tradition, it's human trafficking. So that poor girl, they can't get out. They need help, but they can't get out because the family sells them or they are taken by force. And then the other one, Zama Zama, who have heard of that? Okay, so Zama Zamas, it's illegal miners. So many times you have this mine, but they are closed down because it's not profitable anymore, or the funds ran out, or whatever the reason may be. So somebody will see an opportunity and illegally invade that mine. So they get workers from other countries or from our own country, and they push them down into the mine. They're not allowed to come out. Sometimes they even send in women to live with them. And then they have to mine so they can die. It's very, very unsafe, and it's not sanitary, and it's not healthy. And there's not a lot of research on this, unfortunately. But it's an area that is a big problem in South Africa. Many times on the news we hear about people dying, the police doing a raid, or the mine collapsing, and then they die. And then we have some books from South African survivors. The Buttercup book you'll see on the table behind. It's a very gripping story. Thank you, Barta. She's holding it up for you at the back. I think the book is $150, but it's a very good read. And then Exit is about Griselda Grootboom, who was sold by a friend into human trafficking. And the other one, Van Skoolbank tot Bordeelbed, is also available in English. It's a bit graphic, so if you're a sensitive reader, you might not want to read that. It's really graphic. But it's a good idea just to show you what these girls went through. So they are all South Africans. They are still in South Africa, still talking about this, still campaigning to save other women. And all these books are available to be bought. We have more books, but these are the only ones that I could quickly get pictures of. And Nicole just reminded me, many times when you do research on human trafficking and you get to websites, you will see a lot of statistics. And they will say 33% of this and 56% of that. And 64th so-and-so, but statistics is not a very reliable way to find information on human trafficking. And the reason for this is that human trafficking is a hidden crime. So it's not open, it's not reported. So there can be a whole town being trafficked and not one person reports this. And this goes unnoticed. So that statistics never makes it into the local or global statistics. So it's not very good to rely on the statistics just because it's hidden, it's secret, it's done in the dark, it's glossed over. Many times, unfortunately, police and officials are involved in this, so they don't write up reports. If someone comes to the station, reports this, they just shove it under the table, so it never makes it into a database. And the one statistic that we as STOP feel that we can settle on is that 2% worldwide of people trapped in human trafficking escapes. Bertha is showing me 1%, but when I talked to Nicole, she said we decided on 2. So between 1 and 2%, how's that? Okay, between 1 and 2%. Make it out. So that is a very chilling number. It's very, very small. But I also want to remind you that as the Bible says, I don't have the scripture with me, I forgot that, I'm so sorry, that there's nothing hidden that will not be made known. And the Lord has made known the plans of the enemy as well. So we don't need to sit here in despair. It's good if this grips our hearts. It's good if we feel a shock. It's even good if we shed tears. But we don't need to despair over this because God sees all, He knows all, and He has a plan. And many times He uses us in this plan, and that is fantastic. That's why we are here. So, you know, if you feel your heart going blue, going dark, don't. Just speak to your spirit to lift it up and just remind them, God shows us what we need to see when we need to see it. He makes these plans visible. And as you hear more about trafficking, you'll realize there are certain trends. There are such specific trends, like how they lure victims into sex trafficking. And why do we know this? Because God has made known the plans of the enemy. So there are trends being seen. I went to Ghana to attend a trafficking school there, not to learn how to traffic, but to work against it. And we were at the International Justice Missions office and speaking to, I think, somebody, Christy. He's a very great guy. And he was saying that people oftentimes say, but if you pursue traffickers and you bring things to light in a country, then they just go deeper and deeper and deeper into the darkness. So why bother? And then he said, no, that's not true. They might think they are hiding, but nothing is hidden from God. So they think they are just going deep into the dark underbelly, and now we feel we should stop because then we're never going to see the people. But no, God shows us this. And if we push further and the darkness further away, the light will infiltrate. It will get there. We should not despair because God has this, you guys. He has this. And He gives us an opportunity to be part of that. And Buttercup is such a wonderful story about that. When we spoke to her, that girl is glowing. Have you ever heard of people showing God's love? Well, you see it in that girl. She glows with the love of Jesus. She's just totally transformed. So if you can read Buttercup, that's a very encouraging story, just to show how God can pick up someone who's so totally shattered, put them back together, and use them to minister to other people as well. And as Olivia said last night, if we can use our own shatteredness to minister to other people, you know, to glow into them, I think that will be pretty awesome. So yeah.